Welcome to the Clone Cops podcast.
My name is Phillip Cordell, actor, co-writer.
I'm Danny Dones. I'm the co-writer and director.
I'm Charles Royce, producer, VFX Supervisor.
And I'm Corey Allen, the cinematographer. Welcome to episode 2.
Deuces.
This episode, we're going to get into how we actually made the movie. Some of the pre-production work, a little behind the scenes. Maybe talk about money, talk about casting.
We can also talk about spitballing because
it
is spitballing. Sorry,
Confirmed.
everybody. Confirmed. The Google says it is spiffballing is a misspelling, and no one says that. But
Nobody.
I have ever since I came out of the womb.
So that's the cliffhanger answer from episode 1
Yeah.
that everybody was wondering.
Sorry.
I was really on pins and needles. I wasn't sure.
I was very sure. I felt supremely confident that the answer was going to be spitballing.
I was just so ready to go in your face. It's spiffballing.
Spitballing.
Yeah.
Right. See how humble we're being?
Yes.
Take a lesson from this.
Beautiful.
Great. All right, let's start with the first big question when it comes to making an indie movie. Where did the money come from, and how much money was it?
Yeah, great question. So it's a SAG Ultra Low Budget, meaning our budget was capped at $300,000. So everybody out there wondering, what's it take to make a movie like Clone Cops? It took us $300K. Other people may be able to do it cheaper. We could not, And we should note, I mean, that includes none of the 4 of us being paid anything, right?
Yep.
And if anything, being, coming at a great personal expense for Chuck, who worked 3 months, 12 hours a day, nonstop.
Nonstop.
I turned down paying work to shoot Clone Cops.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I had to pay to work on Clone
Yeah.
Cops. You guys got paid. No. And then where did the money come from? I mean, I think every indie filmmaker feels like they're just a chunk of change away from their, living their dreams, living their lives. And I know I did, right? And so I had a career in tech, worked for 13 years, had an opportunity to sell out of that business to a very small extent and put a big chunk of that money into Clone Cops. And then we had one other investor, Matt Delicato's an executive, co-executive producer on the film. And so essentially we bet on ourselves and we put up the money for the film. And that could either be the best decision I ever made or the worst decision I've ever made.
Available now on all streaming platforms.
That's right. I think I messed up. I put my life savings into an independent film.
So that's what executive producer means. It means you wrote the checks.
It can. Executive producer can mean that you put up the money yourself or that you headed up the collection of the funds. A lot of times people get that EP credit just for bringing in the money and not necessarily supplying it.
Yeah.
Sometimes just having a famous name will get you
helpful.
an EP credit.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because that also helps get money.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so us funding the film ourselves was great in terms of the real, the big, large film industry as a whole is janky. Indie films, money gets janky even faster, right? And right. And so it was so nice when people were like, cool, so will I be paid within 30 days? They're like, we'll cut you a check right now. That's golden rule, man. We golden ruled everything that we could, where it's like, what's the right thing to do? How do we get this done quickly? You give us an invoice, we'll give you a check right now. And that felt very empowering as an indie filmmaker to be like, no, the money's in the bank. We're ready to roll.
Yeah.
You can start buying what you need for the project now in pre-production.
Well, I've been doing film work for 15 years now, and I've worked on many a project where the question at the beginning is, so are we going to get paid on this one? Or so, I mean, I agree. Knowing that we were going to do the right thing from day one was very fulfilling to me. I'm really glad that we were able to do that. And that was partly why the budget is what it was, is because we made a commitment to paying our crew as much as we could. We could not pay them union rates, but we definitely paid them more than a lot of independent films that I've worked on in the past.
Yeah, I love that you guys took that experience from the projects that you've worked on and said, hey, we're going to do this differently,
Well,
And
it allowed
wrote
us
checks every Friday.
Yep.
Yeah. It allowed us to get a crew too that was good. We were able to get some really quality people because while they knew they were working for less than what they were worth, it was enough that they could pay their bills. We weren't asking them to like sacrifice their finances to come work on our film. We were just saying like, hey, you know, it's less than what you should be getting, but
we acknowledge that.
Yeah. We were super upfront about it. It's like we know you're worth more than this. This is just what we have, and we want to make sure that we can pay you everything that we can. But yeah, I think it opened the doors to a lot of folks that wanted to do something really cool, and we were definitely at that point in time the most unique thing shooting in Nashville. So it was a really cool opportunity for a lot of people to come on and do something fun and interesting that they wouldn't normally get to do, and for a lot of people to jump up in position to performing, you know, a job that they want to do in the future. So we were able to give them a credit on a feature film as, you know, the next level for their career path.
Mm-hmm. The other nice thing about having all the money in an account up front meant that we could apply for a grant from the Tennessee Entertainment Commission.
I was going to ask about that. Make sure we plug that.
Yeah, I mean, that seemed, I know my perspective on that was like, yeah, it's a bunch of paperwork and nobody gets it. And the reality was they were super accommodating and helpful in terms of navigating. I mean, it was a mountain of paperwork, and then it was a mountain of receipts and expenses and proving that it was qualified Tennessee expenses. But after 2 years, you know, I mean, we shot in October of 2022, and I think we got our check for 25% of all money that we spent in Tennessee, with a minimum spend of $200K. So we got about $50K back, you know, from the state, which was dope. I mean, you know, again, dude, it's like that's how we've been able to do a lot of the other things that we've been able to do on the back end of the project, on the promotional side, on the theatrical side. All these things kind of sprung from like our willingness to not give up on that, because it would have been real easy to quit a few times during that process. It's an arduous process that they recommend you have a CPA navigate for you.
And did you have a CPA navigate for you?
So no, I did it all, but then I had to have a CPA, you know, review it and sign on. That is part of the deal, is that you do still have to walk it through somebody. But I managed the day-to-day on that and pulled all that material together and classified it and tried to keep it in order. And of course, our first AD, Nate Eggert and his whole team, they knew the deal on the front end as well. So they did a great job at helping keep all that in order on the front end. So a year and a half later, when it was time to really dig in, we were good to go.
Yeah.
Well, we should mention too that Nate, before we ever even set the budget, before we did any of that, we paid Nate a day rate to break down the script and to lay out a budget for us, and to say like he actually did like 3 tiers. Like if you guys have this much money, these are all the things you can do. And this is what you can pay. If you have this much money, this is what you can pay. And so that was super worthwhile, and I think really kind of set the roadmap for us.
Right. And that's one of those things that as indie filmmakers, a lot of people don't think about, right? Which is like, I mean, I can get this kind of money together, but what's the actual budget look like? And I think I can pay people this, that, and that. But bringing in, again, a third party who does it professionally, and maybe, I mean, Nate's still a homie, right? So he still hooked us up on a great rate, but added that experience. Like, find the people in your community with this experience that you don't have, because we're already wearing a ton of hats without also having to get into areas that we have zero experience.
Right.
And speaking of indie filmmakers, is the deal with the Nashville Film Commission that's what it's called, right?
Tennessee Entertainment Commission, yeah.
Tennessee Entertainment Commission. So if they, are there other resources like that people can take advantage of, or can take advantage of in their own states or in their own communities that nobody's ever really heard of, but they're out there, right? Or is it in every state?
Yeah, most states do have some type of entertainment commission with some type of grant program or a tax incentive or a rebate. It's just, again, I feel like the barrier to entry is typically the amount of work it takes, and it's just a huge pain in the butt, especially if like you're an indie filmmaker who's got to hold down a day job, you know, and you just don't have time to also deal with all these back and forth emails and, you know.
Well, and you had to have you had to be fully funded.
Yeah.
To apply. And I think a lot of independent filmmakers are doing crowdfunding and that sort of thing, and they may only raise enough to shoot, and they don't have their budget for the edit, and they don't have the other stuff ready to go yet.
That makes sense.
So they don't even qualify for it. So that was the real trick, was like we had to show them the bank account. It was not a gentleman's agreement. It was like, we got the money here. You can look in our bank account.
Yeah. Which loops it all the way back to like, yeah, so we took that ultimate kind of bet on ourselves, and we're still in the process of working to make sure it pays off for us long term.
Yeah. So if you think back to that process from securing the funding, which obviously you secured yourself for a large part of it, what advice would you give to other filmmakers when it comes to like pulling that budget all the way through, even beyond the release of the film? Because I know we've talked about that a lot, is being really purposeful with what your promotional activity looks like, dedicating a portion of the budget to that. How much consideration went into that for you?
Oh, a ton, right? Because I think, again, the first thought is like, we just got to make the movie and then we'll put it out and it'll get traction on its own and take off. And like, that's not how it works, man. The biggest movies from any studio still have a tremendous amount of marketing money put into them, you know, and they have to do that or else people don't care. You know, you kind of have to keep beating people over the head with the thing before they're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll check out Barbie. You know, it was everywhere for so long. And that's, I mean, it's stoking the fire. I think obviously it's great to have a phenomenal product, but you got to have some money set aside at the end, which is not, you know, again, I think it's, as independent filmmakers, we're just trying to get our thing made. And it really is this like scary, sad thing at the end for so many of us where it's like, oh, damn, we can't even run Reddit or Facebook or Instagram ads or whatever. You know, we just don't have any money left.
But we do, right?
We have, like a couple bucks.
Yeah.
We're down to a couple bucks. I mean, we can't pay for this podcast, but yeah, sorry, bro. But a phenomenal job setting it up.
Shut it down.
From our cinematographer, Corey Allen. Yeah, man. I mean, a lot of that money has gone into supporting our theatrical release, which we would not have gotten to do otherwise. And just the amount of marketing, and you know, I mean, some of it is free and you do it yourself. And if you're lucky enough, I mean, we didn't want to make a movie that we didn't know how to market, right? We wanted to be true to ourselves and to be funny and to be a reflection of us. But also, it's like if your film is two people talking, you know, in a coffee shop for 2 hours or whatever, how are you going to get that to take off? You know, how are you going to, especially if you don't have name talent,
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, you know, in terms of making the most of what you have, this podcast is a great example of, we've looked for opportunities where we can, the investment is sweat equity. You know, what are the things that we can do for free that will help the movie and help with publicity and that sort of thing. And so we've shot tons of content. We're doing this. I cut almost everything, all the promotional content. I've cut almost all of that for us. I think our trailer was the only thing that we had somebody else cut. So we definitely looked for opportunities where we could just put our own time into things, because that's the thing, like our time is free. And I'm more than happy to put that in. And I think you have to be willing to really commit a lot of time after the movie. In a lot of ways, making the movie is the easy part.
Which sounds crazy, right? Because again, for most, you know, we've been in that boat where you run out of money. It's like, how am I going to finish this thing? I've got 2/3 of a movie done, right? So us having and sticking to a shoot schedule and actually getting it across the finish line there at the top end of the process did make it
well.
true.
And that would be another thing that I would say too is you got to do a lot of pre-production. You got to do a lot of planning. If you have a limited resources and limited time, then you want to make sure that every second you're on set, you're working the plan. Mm-hmm. That is not the time to make the plan. You've got plenty of time. Even if you're working a day job, you know, like when on your lunch break, sit down and knock at some storyboards. There's time.
Or don't.
I was building props instead of making storyboards. That is the thing. I just to that point though, I would wake up every morning at like 4 a.m. and I would do our shot list for the day, and then come in and shoot our 10-hour days. So that was my way of making sure that we weren't showing up and be like, what are we doing today? It's like, hey, I know what we're doing. These are all the things we have to accomplish today. So yeah, I mean, when you have limited budget, you have to do a lot of pre-production and a lot of planning. That's free work. That's only going to make it easier for you down the road.
Yeah,
I would say with my producer hat on, seeing you and Corey and Nate each morning getting the plan for the day and then sticking to it was just incredibly impressive.
It was.
It was so cool. I was like, man, this thing is moving like a well-oiled machine, because these three people, our first AD, Nate, cinematographer, and director, were all on the same page and made it happen.
And if you think you're going to get to relax at lunch, you're not.
No, because Nate requires the exact same thing, planning for the next day.
Yeah.
During lunch.
Yeah. Which, hey, it's that's the job. And when you're working with people that you enjoy working with, it's super fun and easy.
Yeah, and I remember I'd come by and be like, cool, can I sit with you guys?
Nope.
And you'd be like, seats taken.
Seats taken.
You got to go sit with the actors.
Yeah.
I think you
Talent's
did a
over
video
there.
about that. Didn't you?
Talent's over there.
That table where all the giggling's happening, that's your table.
Yeah.
It's a serious
This is
working
the serious table.
Shit done table.
Yeah.
It has been a lot of work for you guys, though, and the stamina it takes to, even after the film is out and you have the distribution, and you guys are still hitting the pavement, and it's a lot what you guys are doing, and I've been super impressed with the stamina. Again,
Why, thank you.
filmmakers.
Thank you.
Filmmakers who
I don't
put
hear
their,
that often.
oh, dear God. Filmmakers who put their movie out have to realize, like, it's not over. You know?
Well, and that's a producer that I'm friends with. He was talking about a movie that he worked on, and he's had so much trouble getting the director of that movie to come out and do press and to like talk about the movie. And I'm like, man, do you not want it to be successful? Like that, you have to do that stuff. You have to think, you might not be comfortable doing it, but heck, I mean, stepping out of your comfort zone is art. Like you can't expect to just sit back and wait for the accolades to roll in. It doesn't work that way. Maybe at least it doesn't work that way for me.
Right. Last episode, I made the bold claim, right? Have you heard the news? The film industry is dead. But it's not actually, right? And it's just that it looks a lot different. And yeah, this idea that, especially in our position as first-time indie filmmakers, that I get to just make the movie and then go on with my life. If I want this to be successful, man, that's just not how it works anymore. Right? I mean, it does. And I know we got a whole pod lined up to talk about our marketing efforts, right?
Yep.
And publicity. But yeah, I mean, it's not just showing up for the film anymore from an independent standpoint. Like, I'm committed to doing everything that we can do to make this thing successful, because this is the career that we want in the movie industry.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. So money is secured. Movie's funded. Next steps, we got to get a cast. So talk us through what that casting process looked like.
Yeah, I mean, on this one, there were a couple roles that we had already filled that we knew were going to go to certain people. Phil being one of them.
Right, because we knew if we ran out of money, that you and I could go shoot the rest of them. We could pick up the rest of the film. Yeah. People are like, "How'd you get the role in Clone Cop?" I'm like, "Well, we wrote it for me, first of all, but part of that equation was like, seriously, if we run out of money and just need to go do pickup shots with the clones, I'll just make it happen."
Yeah, and that was always part. Yeah, we felt like, hey, we could rent green screen if we had to, and just throw you in front of green screen and get pickups and stuff done.
Why is he underwater the whole second half of the movie?
Yeah, I think that was part of it, and also like we knew that you had a singular presence on screen that was going to be perfect for the clones, and we knew what you could bring to it, and so that was the other part. Is like that part's locked in. We know we've got the comedy of all the clones ready to go, and we wrote that in your voice. I mean, the right. Clone Cop is definitely suited for your style of comedy. So that was one. We had Justin, who played Thong Daddy 420. Spice J. He and I have been friends for a long time, and he was in Nashville Dad's Club with us and just did such a great job in Dad's Club, and we had so much fun working with him. And another person who came up with a lot of funny stuff when we were shooting. We knew we wanted him to be in there, and Thong Daddy was written for him in his voice as well. And we've certainly seen that play out as people are saying, like, so it's just Justin? It's just Spice J.
Yeah, Spice J and Spice J.
Yeah. Which I don't think is true, because he's such a sweetheart and Thong Daddy's such a scumbag that I don't think that's true at all. But their comedic styling is very similar.
He is literally the sweetest guy. Like, he's
such a sweetheart.
So nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then the rest of the cast, we maybe a couple couple off roles here and there. We went through the casting process with 3 agencies in Nashville.
Yeah, that's, I mean, from an indie film production standpoint, the realization that we as independent producers can reach out to these agencies and say, hey, here's the role, here's the sides, here's the character breakdown, send us tapes, was super empowering. We had never been through that process on this side before. Danny and I are both actors as well and are repped, on that side. So we get audition requests and have been through it from the other end, but it's really cool from the producer side. And we had reached out to a couple casting directors, and because of kind of the price of our budget, again, it's a SAG Ultra Low Budget thing. We didn't have a ton of money to throw their way. And so it came down to so do we even go that route, or do we just see what we can get done on our own? And thankfully, Nate, our first AD, also had some experience in navigating that world. And so it was a really cool thing to send out the sides, right? And then to see those tapes start rolling in, because it feels so much more real. It's like, now we got actors, that can we see this person as Kinder? Yeah.
And then the challenge becomes doing my least favorite thing, telling people no to their dreams. That's a challenge. It really is a challenge in the auditioning process. And so much of it is self-tape now that you aren't in the room with the person, so you don't have to crush their dreams to their
in
face.
Person, yeah.
But it really is a challenge for me to I want everybody to get to do the thing that they want to do. So it's to have to pick and choose can be a little heartbreaking on my side as well.
Yeah.
So we did. Do you have some self-tapes, some live auditions, some web auditions? What all was the mix? What did that look like?
We were still under COVID protocols when we were auditioning, so we had no in-person auditions. It was 99% tapes. I think Quinlan Ash was our only Zoom audition. And I already had an inkling that she was going to play that part because we were friends and I knew her, and
she's a phenomenal actress.
She's a fantastic actor, and we'd seen her in Ozark, and we kind of knew that she could do it. We knew she had the chops for that, and so I think she might have requested a Zoom audition actually, which was great because we were able to give feedback and we were able to make adjustments, and Charles was in on that as well.
I was, never forget it. I just thought she was brilliant. Yeah. It was really cool to see what she brought to Farrah.
Yeah. It's and I will say the self-tape thing, you kind of got to be careful on a casting side of that and go into it knowing that they got as many takes as they wanted to make that tape. So, you as you're watching them, it's something to consider. Is you don't get a chance to give feedback. You don't get a chance to see how they can make adjustments. So we were very fortunate in that everybody that we cast was fantastic and very professional and knocked everything out. But I could see other filmmakers getting in a position where maybe you cast somebody that it takes them 20 takes to get to that point, which when you're trying to get stuff knocked out in a hurry, that could be problematic.
But it's again, it's super cool to see it all come to life, and it's just a really cool process to get to be a part of. And I think sometimes we only see as far as our little world, and as independent filmmakers, okay, I'll plug in this guy is this and that person is that. And it's like, man, doing your own casting call could not be simpler. Agents are out there waiting for your email. They want your email to come through so that they can send out an opportunity to their roster. So don't feel weird about, casting your film, and please don't just put your buddy in it because you think he's funny in real life. Like, if they don't have any on-screen experience, a lot of times that stuff doesn't translate, Mm-hmm.
As someone who is very funny in real life, I can tell you does not translate well all the time.
Well, and we didn't set out to cast our friends in the film, but it did turn out that some of our friends are some of the best actors in Nashville. And the film was cast entirely with Nashville talent, with the exception of Skylar Tillett, who came up from Atlanta, but had submitted through his agent as well and was willing to travel up here to work on the project with us. And what a cool experience that was, having him come up and do his thing.
Yeah. And so let's talk about casting for some of the characters specifically. I know originally one character was written as a man, and then that evolved into a female role. What was that like?
So Porter originally was supposed to be a male, kind of like a father figure, but not necessarily related to anybody in the crew. And then as we were going through rewrites, we thought, man, what it would really raise the stakes, and wouldn't it be a cool dynamic if there was like a parental and child team going on here. And so we changed Porter to a woman and had Cypher be the daughter. And
if you watch it now, it's tough to imagine it any other way, because that relationship is such a crucial part of the emotional core of the film.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that we didn't have that starting out. It was just a dude, it was just the gang boss. It was a lot more what you'd expect.
Well, and Porter was still like, they had a lot of the same beats.
Yes.
There were a lot of that same like parental kind of figure stuff, but we made it a literal thing, and that created a lot more tension, and it created a much more interesting dynamic, and made all those characters more three-dimensional, I feel like. So in the auditioning process for that, what we ended up doing there was kind of taking two separate roles and making it so that we had to cast them as a duo, because we needed them to kind of match up in certain physical aspects. And we were very fortunate that Laura and Allison were probably the two strongest auditions for those roles, and they also happened to both look similar. So they both have red hair, and Laura would want me to mention that she's too young to be Cypher's mother,
and she is.
She's an actor.
She acted.
But she acted older.
And we should point out, we got a lot of phenomenal tapes from talent in Nashville. We're so fortunate to be in a market that's got a giant untapped pool of great actors of all ilks,
Yeah, it wasn't super easy to
No, it was
choose.
tough.
Yeah.
It was tough, man.
Yeah, it was definitely tough. But no, I think Laura, the way we even met her was we were already. I think so many of these people, like you had mentioned before, we kind of already knew them, and it's small town, so it's kind of hard not to. And I've been working here. I've worked on set with a lot of these actors as a props person, and just happened to make friends with them. Henry's a great example of that. Henry Haggard, who plays Frank. He and I worked on something years ago and just hit it off, and we would chat, and we became friends. So he was another person that we were just like, we should get Henry to do this because he'd do great. And we did have him on Nashville Dad's Club. So that was another kind of bonus for us. We'd already shot 2 seasons here in Nashville with different guest stars. I think our whole second season of Dad's Club, we had a guest star on every.
We did.
Mm-hmm. So we'd already cast some really great people in town for those roles. So we kind of had a leg up, and we knew what was available, and we knew
we wanted to use Dion. Shout out Dion Harris.
Dion's hilarious and fantastic.
He's great.
Yeah, that was such a great opportunity to bring him in. He's such a sweet guy.
Bitch.
We need to add that to the soundbar.
We do. He ad-libbed that, and it was just perfect.
Yeah. He got to ad-lib all of his lines. And yeah, it was so fun to bring those people in that we already had a working relationship with. But Laura, to go back to what I was saying, Laura was our acting coach. Phillip and I were taking acting classes with her, and we worked in the same building.
I didn't know you guys went to
We're at Skyway Production or Skyway Studios, and she has a studio over there, and we had set up our pre-production studio, and she would pop in from some time and be like, "Hey, what's up?" It was great. And then we got a tape,
Yeah.
And she crushed. It was incredible.
It was great, and she understood she got the assignment, as the kids would say.
She understood the assignment.
Yeah. That to me, when we were doing the auditioning process, the stuff I was looking for was probably a little deeper. I was looking for people that understood the purpose behind the scenes. Like, what is this scene really about? It's not just about delivering the lines in a believable way. For me, it was more about like an internal process, and do they actually understand what's happening in this scene? Are they really like living this moment, and is it a really truthful performance? And we got some really great tapes with some really good stuff in those moments as well. But that was Laura's the death scene in particular. I was very. I guess I gave some away.
Oops.
She in that scene, I was like that. That was a really personal scene to me, which is why I included it in there. And watching her performance, I was like, she gets it. She knows exactly what I'm trying to say right here. And that to me was super important. And same with Skylar, when we would do the comedic stuff. He was one of a handful of tapes we got where they really understood the comedic part, and they really brought some great comedic timing to that part.
Yeah, and from back to just broadcasting, we had a few roles that we stunt casted, right? If you're an indie filmmaker, maybe you've heard that term, maybe you haven't. Lots of films do it, and that's where you bring in a couple of larger names, and maybe you put them on the poster, or maybe you advertise that Nick Cage is in your movie, right? And there's that. He's done a lot of films where it's like, yeah, you pay him $1 million, he'll come do your thing. He's there for a day or two, and then he's out.
Nick Cage is not in this movie.
Sorry, I should have just let that
to specify,
simmer.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, if he was, y'all would know. But one of those roles was for One Tank Frank, played now by Henry Haggard, and Danny had envisioned that as.
I wanted Henry Zabrowski. He was in Wolf of Wall Street, and he also does the Last Podcast on the Left. He's great. He's hilarious, and definitely had a different energy than what Henry brought to the role. He's more frenetic. But yeah, that was someone we had reached out to, and we got a lot of very polite no's.
We got some very impressive, incredible no's. But probably my point in bringing that up is like once it became clear we weren't going to get Zabrowski, we were like, man, who would crush this role? Henry would absolutely. He's just such a phenomenal actor, and he's got so much experience. So probably the flip side of the coin to don't just cast your friends is like if you've got somebody in your community that has got the chops, but maybe isn't a big name, give them a chance because as reviews are rolling in, a lot of people are pointing out Henry Haggard's performance in Clone Cops because he brings such a frenetic energy, and there's the ups and the downs and the betrayal, and he just such a wide range of emotions, and the way that ended up being shot really worked to his advantage as well, right?
Yeah, well, and I think we've talked about this before too, is the set that we built for the lab and the way we lit it. It was very much a stage. It was 3 walls. It was pretty static lighting. We moved some stuff around here and there, but so it was staged as though it were a theatrical production, really. And we wound up between Rashad and Henry. We had 2 of the finest theatrical actors in Nashville playing those roles. So it turned out fantastic because they knew how to work a stage, and they knew that we never had to ask them to open up the camera or anything. They just knew nope, the crowd is right there. This is where I'm directing everything.
They did.
Yeah,
They crushed.
Yeah, Rashad Rayford, incredible actor, a friend, worked on Nashville Dad's Club with us. Currently in the Mountaintop at TPAC, playing MLK Jr. Just a phenomenal actor and super talented dude all the way around. Rashad the poet. And between he and Henry, what a cool experience getting to see 2 of Nashville's best just kind of going back and forth and building out this world. It's just them for the most part in this lab, and it just feels so vibrant and alive. Thanks also to Charles's VFX works that brought that space to life.
I love Henry Haggard and everything he does. He's so versatile, and not only is he versatile between characters, but in the character, like you were saying, he brought so many different emotions and nailed every single one. Henry Haggard.
Yeah, that's great. So once we had the cast assembled and some really amazing talent that we talked about, next step was pulling together a crew. How did that come to life?
So I've been doing this for a long time. I'm 15 years. I knew a bunch of people that I wanted to work on the movie, and we got a lot of them. The ones that didn't do it. It wasn't because they didn't want to. It was because they weren't available. That's always the struggle when you're trying to put a crew together, is your availability and who's working on what at any given time is always changing. So that was definitely a little bit of a challenge, just in, like we were talking about earlier, we didn't have full rates to give out. So we reached out to some people that we liked their vibe, we liked what they brought to set, and we knew they did great work. and offered them the chance to kind of step up into the next thing.
Yeah, and I mean, we can flip that question right back at you, because we happen, as cinematographer, you put together the entire lighting and camera team based, from people that you knew and had worked with here in Nashville, right? What was that like? I mean, were people into it, or?
It was an interesting conversation with everyone that I reached out to, because it was, hey, I know you do this because you want to make movies, but I also know you don't want to make movies for a couple $100 a day when you're working on commercials and music videos in town, making 3, 4, 5 times that. So a lot of it was, hey, we can give you consistent work for 3 weeks. You're in the same location with the same crew, 3 weeks straight.
10 hour days.
Yeah, exactly. And that stability, I think, was a big selling point for a lot of the crew. And again, I pulled every one of the department heads, like the firsts and the seconds, were from the film community here in Nashville. And they're all some of the best at what they do. And, forever grateful for them carving out 3 weeks of their life and their work and their typical day rate to come make something super fun with us. And it was great.
Well, and that was a strategic advantage we had, right? Where it's like, you may not get to make another weird sci-fi comedy in Nashville for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing you got to take into account when you're crewing up for any, especially independent film, is to remind yourself that for the vast majority of your crew, this is a gig. It's just, it's
right, it's not their life's work.
Like this, they don't have the same stake in it that you have. So you can't expect them to come in and put themselves on the line the way that you're going to. You can't expect them to work a 15, 16-hour day and then come right back in without not even an 8-hour turnaround like so many people want to do. That's just not going to fly, and you're going to start losing your crew, and you're going to have to replace them, and then you're going to get people in that don't know what's going on, and you're going to have to bring them up to speed, and you lose time. And I think in the end, the product suffers. So that was definitely why we chose to do 10-hour days. It would have been great to have those extra 2 hours every day. We could have, shot some inserts maybe. But I think we knew that by doing that, we were buying so much goodwill, and we were allowing our crew to get some rest and spend time with their families and eat dinner at home. And people, by the end of the first week, I could already tell a huge difference. Usually on a Friday, everybody's just dead, and people cannot wait for wrap to just go home and be done with the end of the week. And we had, it was jovial, and people were laughing, and we were cracking jokes, and everybody was having a good time. And that carried through the whole 3 weeks. I feel like everybody had a great time, and I certainly did. I had a blast, and I was probably on less sleep than anybody.
Yeah, and as Chuck said, I mean, it was such a good vibes crew. I mean, everybody was so cool. And I do think that sticking, giving our word that we're going to stick to 10-hour days and actually executing on that. I mean, we had some people who are like, yeah, right, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
How are you going to shoot a movie doing 10-hour days for 3 straight weeks?
Because
they were like that. That's funny that we kind of
we've all been told those lies.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, dude, again, just as indie filmmakers, you're as good as your word, right? So whether that's about the money or the work, it's crazy to me how shady some producers are, frankly. I mean, it's just a real bummer, because it gives the rest of us a bad rep. But the nice thing is, cool, just be a good dude, be a good hang, do what you say you're going to do, and all of a sudden everybody wants to work with you. Yeah. And it brings that, man, it was such a great vibe. And as Danny said, like the best 3 weeks of life, right? That's our biggest hope around this whole project, right? Everything we do revolves around, man, I hope we get to do this again, because that was such a joy to get to do. Like, man, surely we didn't have such a positive experience to only get to do that once. Like, we can bring this model to the forefront. Again, if the industry is changing in dramatic ways, one of those ways should be that we're not doing 16-hour days and burning people out with high stress, high tension sets that can't help but be toxic because everybody's stressed out. Like, I don't want that. I don't want to work in that environment.
We're making make believe. It's, if we're not having fun, then what are we doing? Like this, it should be fun. Yeah. And I think the other great thing about what we did there too, and we experienced it, we kind of knew going in that it was going to be this way, because we did it with Dad's Club as well, was the first time we hire somebody, we get that dubious kind of like, all right, I don't know about you guys. Like, sure, I'll do it. And then,
why does Phil use so many exclamation points in his emails? That makes me feel weird.
Is he really that nice in person?
he is that nice in person. It is exhausting. No, but I think but then once we've worked with them, everybody, almost, I mean, when's the next thing? Can't wait to do the next thing with you guys. You know, it's like that you do earn that goodwill, and then people are excited to work with you in the future, and they turn out great work. Happy people turn out great work.
Yep.
And well, how rewarding was that for you guys? Like having those, everybody kind of show up, you know?
Great question, Chuck.
Thanks. I said it twice.
It was dope, dude. It was, I mean, you create the environment you want to work in, right? Yeah. I think so many people feel powerless going into work and like, oh, I'm just here, and I'm, you know, and people maybe higher up on the food chain set the tone, and then everybody has to deal with that. And we were like, I mean, that's the bizarre thing about kind of being, you know, at the head of this independent film. It's like, cool, what's up to us? What's the vibes that we want people to have? And we had some crazy, you know, I mean, it's all low budget productions. We had some crazy stuff go down on set, and instead of stressing and freaking out right before we shot The Lab, we had our production designer Ben Johnson had a giant 55-gallon drum of the sauce. And I can't remember if I poked a hole or whatever, but you know, a hole got poked, and he was like, "What do we do?" And I was like, "Just get it out of here," which was the bad call. I'm sorry, Ben, that was on me. I said, "Just get it out of here," and of course he takes it out and it busts. Yeah, and we flood our lab set an hour before we're supposed to begin shooting in there for the next 2 to 3 days. And it's, you know, again, the way you deal with those things. I personally tried not to flip out. I was just like, all right, well, we got water everywhere, more water than we can clean up with the current amount of paper towels on hand. So what are we going to do?
I don't remember that at all.
Y'all were working.
We were busy.
I remember it happening. But yeah, the floors looked great.
Yeah, got an unintentional mop in there.
They were pretty clean. That makes sense now, I guess.
So here's the nice thing about shooting in an abandoned mental hospital. Lots of beds. All the beds had those zip-up pee guards. And what's inside those zip-up pee guards? Basically giant 6-foot by 4-foot sponges. Oh, so wow. Every one of those bed mattresses became a sponge. And I was out there with these
50 gallons of sauce.
Yes, comically oversized sponges, you know. But it soaked up the water. And
comically oversized sauce can too. That's a lot of water.
But again, that's just an example of something where, like, I think some sets people would get pissy and anxious and whatever, and for us it's like, cool, here's an opportunity to either we're cool and we figure stuff out and keep a cool head about it, or not. If we're going to be those guys, we need to be those guys. So we figured it out.
That is so Phillip, right? Like, he is that guy.
Well, and that's probably not an example of this, but there were many examples of times when things went wrong and it turned into something great that is in the movie.
The giant sponge scenes.
The giant sponge. You guys are going to love the giant sponge.
Is that in the director's cut? Or?
Yeah.
All the clones get sponge baths.
But like the location, for instance, that we didn't always plan on shooting in an abandoned mental hospital. We were one time going to shoot in an abandoned normal hospital.
That's right.
And we were going to shoot the whole thing in the boiler room of this giant hospital. And that fell through. And we went to the location we ended up shooting, and we ended up with like 6 different looks in that location where we would have had one, and it, I think, would have been arguably a much more diminished product if we hadn't been out there.
So much production value out of what appeared to be a major setback. And the funny thing is that hospital, he's like, no, you know, we're demolishing the hospital in the next 3 months or something. 2.5 years later, it's still there.
Still there.
It's fine.
Still there.
Still sitting there.
Just full of asbestos, just hanging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's talk about the location. So we got the cast, we got the crew, who are all amazing to work with. How did you guys come up with the location? And was that, I know there are multiple scenes that all look very uniquely different. Was that all one spot? Multiples? Tell the people what they want to know.
Yeah, so that's all one location. The whole thing was shot in one area. We didn't have to do any, we call them company moves, and that's when the entire production company has to get up and go to a different location. It takes a lot of time and can really burn up your days. It's truthfully the reason why so many movies take so long to shoot. So it was a major factor for us in keeping our budget low and it allowed us to do a lot of the fun things that we were able to do because we didn't have to factor in those moves and we didn't have to factor in the time that it was going to take to move around all over Nashville. So a lot of the weird fun stuff in the movie is there because we were able to shoot it in one spot.
Yeah, and so inside baseball on that, we didn't know how to find a spot, so we engaged a location manager that Danny had worked with before, D. Butler, right? And D was phenomenal, and we told, I said, hey, man, here's what we're looking for, here's the thing, and he's got, man, I got a spot that could be perfect for you guys. And, of course, once we went over and toured it, I mean, there was so much production value in the building we shot in. You figure the atrium, the hallways, the lab, the classroom.
The basement.
The basement, right? The boiler room. We still got a boiler room, and then that smokestack, with the catwalk.
That was great.
That brick, occupies for a portion of it. I mean, it made our movie so much bigger than it would have been otherwise if we had been stuck in a. That's the indie film hack, right? For first time filmmakers, it's like find a script that you can shoot all in one location. Make it in a house, and then make it really interesting. Better not be boring, It's like,
In a house.
Yeah, and some people are able to pull that off, and that's incredible. But we were so fortunate to get all this added production value, and I'm very comfortable. I mean, you want some inside baseball? We paid $7,000 and had use of that facility for 4 weeks.
That's nuts. That's so cheap. And I think that's partly the state, right? The state of Tennessee allows you to, because it was state-owned property, so it was like $100 a day from the state. And then we paid the caretaker, and he was awesome. And the other great thing about that location is the state troopers, Tennessee state troopers, use it as a training facility. So
now,
and they were just kind of like, do whatever you want. Just paint. You can paint the walls. You can do whatever you want. You move stuff around. Like, we don't care. We don't care at all. And so we were able to completely. Like, normally you would have to reset your location after. So if you're going to paint the walls, you have to paint them back. If you're going to move furniture, you have to move it back. And they did not care. We were able to just pack up and leave. We were done.
And that is how the herb and the bean
came to be.
Came to be.
But and painted on the walls.
And stayed there all the way up through the current production of Scarpetta by Blumhouse, which is also shooting in that location.
Oh, it's Blumhouse?
Blumhouse.
That you're currently
cool.
on.
Danny's on that show. Yeah, I love
so
it.
He's back in the same spaces, right? That we did our thing, which is a trip.
Is wild.
That's a crazy time.
But yeah, get yourself a location, man. Again, that's that area of expertise that we didn't have. You make one phone call to somebody in the industry. Hopefully that's a friend of a friend that's not going to hit you with that full rate. And to Dee's credit, his first question was like, cool, what's your budget, man? Yeah. Because that's people want to work and they want to help. And so if you know if you don't have any idea what your budget is, it's going to make it real difficult because usually people want to work within your budget if they can.
Yeah. And he did, he filled out all the paperwork for us and got the
the permit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he definitely helped us out a ton with that. Yeah, definitely a choice.
But I had not worked with a location manager before, and I thought, we're a small little indie film. I'm going to have to figure this out myself, right? As opposed to who does this professionally and knows every spot in town. And then my mind tells me, you won't be able to afford him. I'm like, he's just a regular dude. He does this every day. It's no skin off his back to be like, yeah, dude, here's a number. I'll make a call. And
yeah. I know. So you recall what the location fee was? Do you remember what it cost to work with D? Like just in general?
I don't remember what we paid him a flat rate because he didn't stay with us through the whole production. He pretty much just set us up, and then his part was done. I don't remember what we paid him. It was less than he was worth.
Way less. Again,
is that the guy that came and unlocked everything?
No, that was Mike Reeves, who was caretaker of the property.
Yeah.
And again, the cool thing about the property, we keep referring to it as a mental hospital, and it was like basically it had been forced to shut down, and it was a school for mentally challenged kids. And so some of these rooms just had very strange vibes, and a lot of our cast and crew were like, I won't go down that hallway. The paintings on the wall, at children's height scare me. And we're shooting one of our multi-clone battle scenes, and I'm laying down and Brick's next to me, and I'm like, dude, look at this. Because I look over, and there's a giant file folder that we're using. So much of the stuff that is in the movie was just on the location. And it's a file folder, and it says death review files. And I'm like, oh no, you want some light reading? You want to read about how everybody died here? I mean, dude, it was a vibe.
Just a mild HIPAA violation.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
A mild HIPAA violation to leave the paperwork there.
Yeah, so that's probably 95%, 98% of the movie was all that one location. Then we did a day with the toy commercial
Yeah.
at Phil's house.
And then we did a day on green screen at Skyway. But yeah, most of the movie we shot there. And those 2 days were shot much later. We ended up doing a couple of pickup days.
In March and May. So we did Principal in October of 2022. We shot the toy commercial in either February or March of 23. So about 4 months later. And then picked up Robbie's stuff in May. He was the last piece of the equation.
Yeah, I think we did that on my birthday.
What's your birthday?
Happy birthday to
I'm
you.
pretty sure it was.
That's what we got you. Work.
Yeah.
Free
Thank you.
work.
Thank
You
you.
come work for free.
Yes. To work with Ravi Patel? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And again, dude, just to stress how, I mean, I know we keep harping on it, but like that boiler room, the way the paint was peeling off the wall, I mean, to get that level of production value, we could have spent thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you find the right place, and it's got it.
Yeah, we walked down to that location. It was like, this is dressed. We're good.
Yeah.
We're
Good, light it.
The hardest part was for Barrett and Chris Dyer to go in and figure out where we wanted these little pockets of light for everything. And it really was, what can you do to accent the dirtiness and the griminess that's already here? And like, that was fun.
It was beautifully lit down there.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, we'll talk more about that in another episode. But I think that pretty much wraps it up from like pre-production, getting us cast, crew, finding locations.
Yeah.
Like maybe next episode, we would love to talk about designing the world of Clone Cops. So make sure you tune in for that one. We'll get deep into some old Chucky's work.
So deep.
Quick shout out to Nate Eggert and his entire crew every single day. Good grief. Weren't they great?
And Chris Dyer, rest in peace.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy. Great work. And we're clear.